Good evening and welcome to the Alternatives Public Meeting for the Project Development and Environmental Study or PD&E study for State Road 934 Northeast 79th Street from west of Pelican Harbor Drive to east of Adventure Avenue. Hola, bienvenidos. Antes de comenzar, si necesita traducción durante la reunión, por favor informe uno de los miembros de nuestro equipo.
Alors, nous bien contents aujourd'hui, avant de commencer, si nous avons monde qui besoin de traduction créole pendant la rencontre ça, tant pis, payons dans monde qui en charge atelier pour ça.
The financial project ID number or FPID number for this project is 449007-1-22-01. Efficiency Transportation Decision Making Number or ETDM 14484. We appreciate your attendance and participation. The time is 6:06 p.m. My name is Paula Martinez, and I am the project manager with the Florida Department of Transportation, District 6. The Florida Department of Transportation, or FDOT, is hosting this virtual alternative public meeting as an opportunity to provide you with an overview of the proposed study alternatives and potential social, environmental, and economic effects, followed by a question and answer session. Here with me today are representatives from FDOT and the Consultant Project Management project team. At this time, Paulette Summers, the Consultant Community Outreach Specialist and the Media Moderator, will review tonight's participation options. Paulette?
Good afternoon, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending tonight's public meeting. Before I get started, I just wanted to ask if there are any elected officials in attendance tonight. I'd like to invite you to use the raised hand button on the GoToWebinar panel, and you may just go ahead and do so. Use that feature on the control panel. You may be called upon at that time too as well, and you can also go ahead and type any information on yourself in our question box. Let me see if there are any raised hands, any elected officials or any of their representatives that may be with us tonight. You can go ahead again and use the raise hand button on the GoToWebinar control panel. That should be on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. It does not appear that we have any raised hands. So with that, I'm just going to move directly into our rules of engagement at this time. As you can see on the screen, all attendees are automatically muted to start tonight's meeting. Providing comments during the open discussion session, you may call 1-800-418-0524. You can also raise your hand during the comment period, and you'll be unmuted in order of raising your hands. You can also submit questions or comments via the question box. Again, that is located in the top upper right-hand corner of your screen. If for any reason at all you are experiencing any technical difficulties, you may contact our IT specialist, Manny Costales, at 786-352-4351, or you may email him at manny@graph-code.com. Slide 3, please. So these are some methods or means that we use to advertise tonight's meeting based on public notice. Public notice for this public meeting included information on how to access the team's platform. It was provided in the form of letters to property owners as well as tenants in the project area. A posting in the Florida Administrative Register was also completed. We did put information about the project on the project website and through other various different means of notification, including newspaper and contact list, as well as various different social media platforms, those of which you're used to, including Twitter and Instagram. Next slide, slide 4, please. This is some information about our Title VI non-discrimination compliance. So The Florida Department of Transportation complies with various non-discrimination laws and regulations, including Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Tonight's meeting is being held without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. For questions or concerns, you may contact the Florida Department of Transportation's Title VI coordinators who are listed here on your screen. Slide 5, please. So the NEPA assignment statement is as follows. The environmental review consultant and other actions required by applicable federal environmental laws for this project are being or have been carried out by the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, pursuant to 23 U.S.C. 327 and a memorandum of understanding dated May 26, 2022, and executed by the Federal Highway Administration and FDOT. Slide 6, please. So at this time, I'm going to ask Paola to come back on screen to discuss some safety, community, as well as technology efforts regarding this project. Paola?
Thank you, Paulette. FDOT is committed to ensuring the state's infrastructure preserves residents, business, and visitors to meet their needs now and in the future. Key areas include safety, resilience, supply chain, technology, and workforce development. The following benefits are included in this project. Safety being one of the main goals of this project, with a particular emphasis on maintaining the emergency response times and evacuation route of State Road 934 Northeast 79th Street. The study is also looking at new technology like placing video detection at signalized intersections to improve traffic flow. The project team is also analyzing resilient materials like carbon fiber reinforced plastic, CFRP, which is more resistant to corrosion than traditional steel reinforcement used in existing bridges and will reduce future maintenance costs and extend the service life of the bridges. Improvements proposed in this study will benefit local residents and businesses as well as the traveling public. With that being said, we would like to thank everyone who had been involved from the very beginning of this project. Many of the recommendations have been incorporated into the analyzed alternatives. Next slide, please. As stated previously, FDOT is conducting a PD&E study focusing on 4 flat bridges, 2 pairs of bridges highlighted by the arrows in red. These bridges are along State Road 934 Northeast 79th Street over Biscayne Bay, separated by North Bay Island. Shown here are the project study limits that extend from west of Pelican Harbor Drive to east of Adventure Avenue for a total distance of 0.87 miles. These bridges connect 3 islands within the City of Miami Beach, and North Bay Village in Miami-Dade County. Please don't confuse this with the lane repurposing project being completed by North Bay Village, as this project is still being evaluated. Next slide, please. PD&E study is part of the transportation project delivery process. As shown in this slide, the planning phase has been completed, and we're at the PD&E study phase. The PD&E study process is followed by FDOT to evaluate engineering alternatives and environmental impacts and comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, federal and state environmental laws, and meet requirements with federal funding is involved. At the end of the PD&E study and following approval from FDOT Office of Environmental Management, a preferred alternative will continue into the design phase, beginning in 2025, followed by the construction, which is anticipated to begin in 2028. Next slide, please. The PD&E study has its own process, which initiates with data collection. including reviewing the existing conditions within the project limits, identifying engineering issues, and further studying potential concerns. Preliminary concept alternatives are developed, and more environmental and engineering analysis are performed and documented. The engineering analysis will develop alternatives that meet the needs of the project, while environmental analysis will determine what potential impacts the project might have on social, cultural, natural, and physical environment. These analyses will support decisions regarding the alternatives developed. Public involvement is ongoing throughout the PD&E study. We started off with a project kickoff meeting that took place in November of last year, November 29, 2022. Here we are today to obtain your input on the alternatives developed and any project recommendations. After this meeting, we can redefine and screen alternatives to identify the preferred alternative. Once the preferred alternative is selected, we will finalize the PD&E documentation, present our selected alternative to the public, and obtain the LDCA, which is also the location and design concept acceptance, to then proceed to the design phase. Next slide, please. A little bit on the project background. The existing bridges are flat concrete slab bridges, which were constructed in the 1970s. There are a total of 4 bridges, 2 pairs, that connect the main line, Miami, to Miami Beach. Since the bridges cross Biscayne Bay, they are deemed non-navigable by the U.S. State Coast Guard. There have been several rehabilitation efforts performed on the bridges, such as in 2004 and 2010, where structural repairs were performed. Back in 2015, the bridges were milled and resurfaced, which including the installation of traffic railing on the outside lanes for bicycles and pedestrians in the eastern bridge. Based on the most recent bridge inspections performed in November 2020, indicated the bridges have a sufficiency below 50, which means the bridges may qualify for bridge replacement funds. The bridges are not unsafe, and the department utilizes this rating to program funds and resources. Next slide, please. The existing conditions. The bridge east of North Bay Island are also two separate structures. The bridges west of North Bay Island include 2 separate structures that carry eastbound and westbound traffic. The typical section consists of 6 lanes divided by a 15.5-foot wide raised median with 2 11-foot inside travel lanes and 1 13.5-foot wide outside travel lane that shares its use with bicycle traffic. Curb and gutter are adjacent to the outside travel lanes along with a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Next slide, please. The bridges east of North Bay Island are also 2 separate structures that carry eastbound and westbound traffic. The typical section consists of 6 lanes divided by a 15.5-foot raised median with a 10-foot wide travel lanes, a designated 5.5-foot wide bike lane, and curb and gutter, with a 4.5-foot sidewalk with a traffic rating separating pedestrians from traffic. Next slide, please. The purpose of this project is to evaluate bridge replacement alternatives to address the deficiencies of 4 existing bridges, the 2 pairs. The project is needed to address bridge deficiencies and maintain emergency evacuation route and response time. The existing bridges substructure are more than 50 years old in a highly aggressive environment, showing signs of deterioration. As part of the inspection process, several structural components were evaluated and assigned a ranking or a condition based on the National Bridge Inventory System. As you can see to the right, the ranking on the deck and superstructure have a ranking of 4, and the substructure a ranking of 6 to 7. As previously stated, the sufficiency rating of these 4 bridges is also below 50. This does not mean the bridges are unsafe. The department will continue to perform timely repairs to keep the flat bridges in good condition until they are eventually replaced. This PD&E is a class action of type 2 categorical exclusion, which means minimal environmental impacts are anticipated. Next slide, please. Alternatives evaluation process is part of the PD&E study, which deals with the development, evaluating, and elimination potential alternatives based on the purpose, need, and need for the project. The alternatives evaluated process begins with engineering and environmental data collection, existing project conditions, and identifying resources. This information is then analyzed to identify key project issues and establish an evaluation criteria. Prior to beginning the alternatives development, a typical section is determined. The typical section analysis includes number of lanes, lane widths, shoulders, and pedestrian and bike features. These are also evaluated against engineering and design criteria and environmental resources. Each build alternative is then developed as it relates to roadway and bridge design criteria with the goal of minimizing impacts to the community and the natural and physical environments. Some of the design requirements include traffic, utilities, drainage, and so on. Social, cultural, natural, and physical environments are also evaluated with the goal being to avoid or to minimize impacts to these resources. Such criteria includes land use, mobility, wetlands, water quality, wildlife, traffic noise, and many more. Next slide, please. The next step is screening of the alternatives against the criteria established during the alternatives development. The alternatives were developed with input obtained throughout the study process from the public, federal, state, and local government agencies. The no action or no build alternatives is one where no improvements are made. This alternative will remain throughout the study and serve as the baseline for comparison with the other build alternatives. The Transportation System Management and Operation, or TSM&O alternative, was considered. This alternative includes strategies that manage traffic congestion and preserve the capacity of the transportation system. Although this alternative does not address the structural deficiencies of the bridges and does not meet the purpose and need for this project, these strategies will be evaluated for the built alternatives and coordinated with the surrounding agencies. The rehabilitation/repair alternatives were also considered and dismissed. Whether the bridge is rehabilitated or repaired, this option does not meet the purpose and need for the project. Steve will discuss this in further detail as why these alternatives were dismissed. There are two built alternatives. These alternatives maintain the current horizontal alignment but with different vertical profiles to meet the clearance requirements while also minimizing impacts to the community and environment. Following this meeting, the built alternatives will be further redefined and a preferred alternative will be identified. The preferred alternative will be presented at a future public hearing. The results of the engineering and the environmental analysis are being documented in project reports that will be made available for public review ahead of the public hearing. Because of the proximity of Pelican Harbor Park and Marina, the residential communities within North Bay Village and the Treasure Island, your views on the project improvements and their potential effects are welcome via the chat feature, mail, email, or the project website. Now I'll pass it on to Steve, our consultant project manager, so he can further go into detail on the alternatives and the next steps.
So thank you. As was mentioned, consideration was given to the minor and major rehabilitation options, which we refer to throughout the PD&E studies, alternative 1A and 1B. The minor rehabilitation of the existing bridges is going to include the cost of performing repairs and strengthening various bridge components as needed, And then the major rehabilitation of those bridges would include costs for replacing a number of bridge components, including the superstructure of the beams, which is shown there on the bottom right. Next slide, please. So based on an evaluation of the minor and major rehabilitation options, we eliminated or determined that alternative 1B or 1A and 1B were impractical alternatives. And there was a number of reasons that we eliminated them from further study. First off, the rehabilitation solutions would not effectively address the structural deficiencies in the long term and address the need that was mentioned earlier in the presentation. Those structures are nearing the end of their useful design life. In addition to that, the existing geometric substandard conditions that exist today would still remain with alternative 1A and 1B. And then the cost of the rehabilitation and the continued maintenance of those bridges would far outweigh the benefit and the service life of the bridges. And for those reasons, alternative 1A and 1B were eliminated from further study. Next slide, please. So in addition to that, we then began to look at bridge replacement alternatives and evaluated different options, and that's what we're presenting this evening. As mentioned earlier, the first step in determining the bridge replacement alternatives was to determine a recommended typical section. So various typical section alternatives were evaluated. We took an evaluation of the different options for the number of lanes, the lane widths, the inside and outside shoulder widths, pedestrian bicycle accommodations, and the actual structure configuration. So different combinations of those elements were evaluated. They were then looked at in terms of the functionality of the bridges, safety, and one important issue was the constructability. Is could the replacement bridges be constructed while minimizing impacts? The recommended typical section was presented at the public meeting held last November. The bridge replacement alternatives we're referring to throughout the PD&E study as alternative 2A and 2B. So they share the same recommended typical section and the same structure type. The typical section is going to consist of two 10-foot travel lanes in each direction, one 11-foot travel lane, and then an 8-foot 4-inch bike lane and a 6-foot sidewalk in each direction. There's also a concrete barrier that would separate the bike lane and the sidewalk. Next slide. So that recommended typical section was then applied to the roadway and the bridge within the vicinity of the bridge pairs. So the primary difference here between alternatives 2A and 2B is going to be the vertical bridge profile, which is going to be the distance between the mean high water elevation of Biscayne Bay and the bottom of the lowest member of the structure. So alternative 2A has a vertical profile that is similar to the existing bridges, which is approximately 3 feet above the vertical clearance today above the bay. Alternative 2B has a vertical profile that is going to be raised to a minimum of approximately 7 feet. And that's being done to meet the sea level rise criteria. So that would, that would determine or increase the vertical clearance over the mean high water for Biscayne Bay. Due to that increased profile, alternative 2B would require what we would term gravity walls or retaining walls. And it's also going to require reconstruction of a number of driveways adjacent to the bridges as they're tying back into the roadway, which I'll show in the next several slides. So next slide, please. So the image that's shown on the screen, this is a bird's eye view of alternatives 2A and 2B beginning just west of the western bridge pair. So alternative 2A you'll see on the top and alternative 2B is on the bottom. Again, our focus is replacing the existing bridges. However, in this area, we are looking at ways to accommodate bike lanes from Pelican Harbor Drive as it ties back into that western bridge pair. So that is under evaluation right now. Next slide. So as we look at the first bridge pair, again, alternative 2A is being replaced in kind. Alternative 2B on the bottom, as I mentioned, there would be retaining wall that would need to be constructed as the bridge is tying back into the roadway. That's shown in the purple lines just east and west of the bridges. For alternative 2B, we also have a temporary construction impact that's shown on the south side. That would result in temporary impacts to Pelican Harbor Park. Next slide. As we move to the island, One of the items that we're suggesting as part of this study for both alternatives is the removal of an existing mast arm signal that's there today, and to close the median at that same location that's on the east end of the island. And that was there originally to accommodate the fire station that was on the north side of 79th Street. So we are proposing to have that removed. For alternative 2B, again, there would be a retaining wall that would be required, again, as a result of the bridge tying back into the roadway section. And then in this location, we do have a number of driveway reconstructions that would need to occur. And again, that's the result of the raised profile of alternative 2B. Next slide. Again, as we look at the eastern bridge pair, alternative 2A again is replacing in kind. Alternative 2B again would require a retaining wall. We have a second temporary construction impact that would occur again on the south side of 79th Street, and then an additional driveway reconstruction that would need to occur on the south side as well, where the existing businesses are today. So next slide. So one of the important elements of the PD&E study was to evaluate potential environmental impacts and as well as benefits. And the location of the bridge replacement was the focus. So the bridges, they cross Biscayne Bay, which is designated as an aquatic preserve, an outstanding Florida water, and also designated as a state designated nursery for marine species. Bethnic surveys, which are the surveys that are going to look at the water bottom, those were conducted to delineate seagrass within the project area, also to document existing habitat conditions and to record any observations of protected species. The areas in the blue and green on the screen represent areas where seagrasses are present. Next slide, please, 25. So in addition to our in-water surveys, we also collected data for a wide range of environmental resources, including various social, cultural, natural and physical features. Through our data collection analysis that we conducted for all the environmental resources, we've noted that there would be no increase in traffic noise that's not anticipated, and there would be no impacts anticipated to air quality, contamination, archaeological resources, or community resources. Minimal impacts would likely occur to wetlands and seagrasses, and then temporary impacts would occur to Pelican Harbor Park, which is a Section 4F resource. And again, that would occur as part of the construction, and then the utilities that are currently located on the bridge. As we finalize our evaluation, we will also continue our coordination with the state and federal permitting agencies and begin to develop our mitigation plan for any impacts that might be unavoidable. Next slide. So anticipated impacts from the no build and the bridge replacement alternatives were compared, and the major differences between those alternatives are shown here on the screen. Major differences are going to relate to how the alternatives meet the FDOT roadway and bridge criteria, their estimated service life, whether they meet the sea level rise requirements, cost, and then potential environmental impacts. The PD&E documents that we're currently preparing will describe the impacts in detail, and those reports will be made available for review by the public prior to the public hearing. Next slide. So in terms of schedule, the PD&E started in May of 22. It's anticipated to be complete by fall of next year. So following the meeting this evening and then the in-person meeting this Thursday, the alternatives will be refined as needed, and the PD&E study documentation will be completed and made available prior to the public hearing, which is tentative for April of next year. After the completion of the PD&E, a preferred alternative will move into design. As mentioned earlier, that is currently funded for 2025, and then design will be followed by construction, which is funded for 2028. Next slide. There have been various opportunities for the public to provide input on this project, including the public kickoff meeting held late last year, and then the meetings that we're having this evening and this Thursday. Based on input received from previous meetings, as well as the analysis that's ongoing and that will complete during the PD&E study, again, a preferred alternative will be determined and identified, and that'll be presented back to the public again at a future public hearing. Input and information that we receive at tonight's virtual meeting, as well as the meeting in person on Thursday, that will all be taken into consideration as we prepare the final documents for this study. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Paulette.
Thank you so much, Steve. We've reached our public engagement portion. We're just going to ask that everyone stays informed, and that's just simply because we know how public engagement is a critical component of the PD&E process, and we encourage you to be involved, stay involved throughout the entire project life. In addition to the previous public kickoff meeting and alternatives public meeting this evening, future opportunities for engagement includes the public hearing, as Steve mentioned, and additional opportunities to provide throughout the PD&E study. We ask and encourage you to visit the project website, which is located at fdotmiamidade.com/79th, that's 79th Street, Bridges PD&E study. Again, that is fdotmiamidade.com/7 Street, Bridges PD&E study. Slide 30, please. So at this time, I do want to remind our listeners or attendees about the contact information for each and every one of our management staff that's on our project. We do have our FDOT project manager who presented earlier, Paola Martinez. Paola can be reached at the FDOT District 6 office. That's 1000 Northwest 111 Avenue, Miami, Florida 33172. You may call her at 305-470-5210, or you may email her at paola.martinez@dot.state.fl.us. In addition, our consultant project manager, Steve Snell, can be reached at HDR. His mailing address is 8333 Northwest 53rd Street, Suite 302, Doral, Florida 33166. You may call him at 904-598-8964, or you may email him as well at steve.snell, that is SCHNELL, @hdrinc.com. Slide 31, please. Next slide. So public comments, our virtual attendees may go ahead and type in the question box on the control panel. As I've mentioned before, it is on the upper corner of your screen. You may select the raise hand button on the control panel too as well. You may unmute your microphone when your name is called. For those persons who may be dialing in, I do want to make mention that you are in listen only mode. If you are calling in via smartphone, you will be able to raise your hand as well to provide comments at the end of tonight's presentation. Slide 32, please. Okay, so right now we've reached our safety message portion, but I did want to ask if there is anyone at this time that has any questions or comments. We just again encourage you to use the raise hand button, or raise hand feature, I should say. Okay, I see that we have a raised hand here from Natalia Niera. Ms. Niera, can you hear me? Are you able to unmute yourself? Do you have a question? Okay, there you go.
There we go.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Good
Okay,
afternoon.
perfect.
Just a comment. This is Natalia Nader. I'm a park planner with the Miami-Dade County Parks Recreational Open Spaces Department. So any impacts to Pelican Harbor Marina, we would like to meet with Paola to discuss any potential impacts and how they comply with our county home rule charter for Article 7. That's my only comment.
No problem. That will be our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for coming on, Paola. Is there anyone else that has any questions or comments? And before I do continue, has there been any elected or appointed officials that may have joined us since we started tonight's presentation? If you wouldn't mind just raising your hand or making us, is there anyone? Let me just see if we have any raised hands. I'm not seeing any raised hands, so it doesn't appear. Okay, hang on one moment. I see Richard Chevroni. Hold on one moment. Okay.
Hi, good evening. I'm the Vice Mayor of North Bay Village. And
yes.
I have been listening to your webinar, and I will make my comments via email if you don't mind.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Vice Mayor. Yes, we definitely encourage you to do so and look forward to your comments by email. You do have Paola's email address as well as her telephone number. So again, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see that we have a question from, it looks like it's from Brett Fowles-Holtz, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. The question is as follows: will the left-hand lane at Harbor Island signal be lengthened since there will be a new building being built and increased traffic to Harbor Island? Not sure if this is the right forum. Who on our team can take that question? Can I give it to Paola? Okay, great. All right, Paola, go ahead.
Actually, we can give it to Steve. We're actually have a lengthening on one of the left turning lanes.
Okay,
And
Steve, go ahead.
if I understand that correctly, that's the westbound left turn lane.
Let me find out from him because he's typing in his question. Brett, do you mind letting us know if, yes, he says yes, correct. Thank you.
Yes, that is being, so again, with the traffic, the way that works, anything that's been approved would factor into our modeling of traffic. So if there's any planned development, those would all factor in, or we would account for that traffic in our modeling efforts. For the design, then we design based off of that. And we looked at the number of vehicles that are making those turns within those intersections. I believe the lane that's being, that was the question about, that is currently being lengthened. That's within the plans to meet the FDOT criteria. But that is if you're talking about the westbound lane, that is being somewhat lengthened to accommodate that future traffic.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. Yes, he said, okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Brett. Okay, any other questions or comments from anyone? Let me see if there are any other, does anyone else have any questions? I'm not seeing any additional raised hands at this time. Again, feel free to, if you're calling in, feel free to type your questions in the box, the question box, and a member of our team, myself, would just go ahead and just read those questions like we just did for Brett. Let's go to slide 32, since we have no other comments or questions. Thank you so much. So this is our safety message. It has to do with the target zero. Basically is let's get everyone home safely is their tagline. So before we end fully tonight's meeting, we'd like to take a minute to share some information on Florida's Target Zero campaign. Target Zero is a statewide initiative to reduce the number of transportation-related serious injuries and deaths across Florida to zero by focusing on influencing dangerous drivers' behavior before serious and fatal crashes occur. Target Zero aligns resources and establishes actions for all safety partners to take evolutionary steps to improve how Florida connects, interacts, plans, designs, operates, and maintains its transportation system. So for more information on the Target Zero initiative, you may go to the fdot.gov projects/target0 for more information. So in short, that website address is target0fl.com, and you may go to that website for additional information on this very important safety campaign. Thank you so much and have a good evening.